Hello, I'm Luis. Cafepreneur is a casual meeting that we meet different people every day, and each 2 months we just share a table of coffee and talk about different things in terms of innovation and entrepreneurship. Today we have people from this town, and we have a guest from Brazil. So I believe this is a good moment to start sharing our ideas, what's happened here in Waterloo Region, and connecting Brazilian people and Brazilian companies as well. This is a little bit.
Feel free to share.
The first idea here is I would just, because we have an order here in terms of the time, I would like to Jacqueline introduce herself and tell a little bit what she's doing here in town.
Because it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's very cool, yeah, it's very cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm a writer. I've been writing since I was so little, and what I've loved most is telling stories. So what I'm doing here in Kitchener-Waterloo is I'm helping entrepreneurs and startup founders tell their stories about their inspiration for their company. Why did they start their company? Where did they get the idea? And what made them feel comfortable enough to jump off that cliff and actually run with it? So the stories that I hear here are absolutely amazing and inspirational, and I just think that those stories need to be shared with everybody.
Nice. So what's interesting here that we have a table with writers, entrepreneurs, and the other side we have a publisher. And Adriano would like to introduce yourself from Brazil and tell a little bit what is Draft in Brazil, and what is your goal and your think about this movement to move to Canada and start entrepreneurship here.
All right. Well, it's very nice to be here with you. Speaking from São Paulo. It's quite chilly today. I am looking forward to meeting you in Canada. I think it's much warmer over there right now. My name is Adriano, and as Luis said, I am a publisher. I had a 10 years career in the print media. I worked for Editora Abril, which is the biggest, the largest publishing house in Brazil. I worked in a business magazine named Exame, which would be the Brazilian Fortune. I would say so, just for making it easier for people in Canada to understand what kind of magazine Exame is. After that, after working in Exame, I moved to an editor-in-chief position. So I was promoted to this position in Super Interessante magazine, which Super is a pop science magazine, and incredibly is one of the largest circulation magazines in Brazil, and deals with pop science. So I think this was my main cycle in Editora Abril. I spent 5 years editing Super Interessante. After that, I moved to broadcast. I was very curious about changing from print media to television, so I moved to Rio, and I worked for TV Globo, which is I think is the world's third largest network, and I worked. I was the managing editor of Fantástico, which is a show, news and entertainment show that goes aired on Sunday nights. It's a very important program for it's a very important show for TV Globo. After I came back from there, I left my executive career and I became an entrepreneur. It's been 10 years now that I am by myself in the market. and I changed it from broadcasting to digital media. So that was 2008, and I brought Gizmodo to Brazil. Do you remember Gizmodo? One of the largest blogs in the world, from Gawker Media, New York. And we did very well with Gizmodo in Brazil, and the company grew during that time, because remember, in 2008 there was no social media in the world, in our lives. So the blogosphere was the real revolution inside the digital revolution. So we did well with Gizmodo in Brazil, and we sold the company 3 years after we started. So it was 2011 when I reacquired my rights for publishing in 2013. 2 years after I sold the company, I was able to launch a company on the segment where first company used to work. I launched it. Hello, how are you?
He didn't even
So
know I was here.
very long pitch.
Yes, I think I just extended so long. After that, I can tell you more if you like.
Yeah, I believe it's a great moment for draft.
I'm old, so my story is a bit long because I'm old.
I think I've got you there.
So here we have Ellyn is with us now. So the idea of this Cafepreneur is introduce a little bit short, 60-second pitch, and we will share some ideas about here content marketing, the new business models, about this digital media marketing, and discuss a little bit about storytelling, creative business, social business, and this stuff. So, Ellyn, you have your 60 seconds.
Oh my goodness. Okay. All right. I'll try and be short. So I'm old as well. I run my own marketing agency in this area while serving the tech market. I actually have clients all over the world called Ignition Communications, specializing in marketing communications and boutique PR. And then 2 days a week, I have the pleasure of working with people like Luis and Rodrigo at the Accelerator Center, where I am a mentor there. So I am the marketing communications mentor to the startups, which is fantastic because startups are tons of fun to play with, and it sort of allows me to do problem solving. My clients at Ignition are more the bigger companies. So locally, I work a lot with D2L, and I work a lot with Unitron, which has really embraced storytelling. I work with TomTom out of Amsterdam. There's a company called Coach, which does IT services that I'm just recently starting to do some work with. A lot of writing, a lot of storytelling. I'm a big, passionate storyteller. I'm a big talker as well, so I'll stop it there.
So this is the main topic that we bring to this table is about storytelling and the writers, people that really like to tell the stories, what's happening behind the scenes, not just news. Because we know that when you look for a channel of news, you can seek others, it will be the same.
Yeah.
Sometimes the same text, copy and paste. So what I love when I met Adriano in Brazil as not only this storytelling, but how produce this in digital way and develop new business models. So the question is a little bit here, I would like to put it this table is, there is something new in the market in terms of digital business, new business models that we could understand. Okay, we could use advertising as images in my webpage, or very old-fashioned, but we have other ways to really create more narrative, chronicle the stories. So I would like to listen from Adriano as well, your point of view about this revolution in terms of business models in digital media. So if you can give your impression, we can discuss here after.
I think this is a challenge for all of us. I made my career in the old media, and it was a territory where everything was set, and we just had to do our creative job. And right now, it's not possible to think this way any longer. So what I'm doing here is since I left my executive career behind 10 years ago, I am surviving in the digital media market by myself, not as a freelancer or a free agent, but as a company owner. So I'm dealing with this reconstruction of the business model during the last decade. I must say I don't have an answer.
Well, I think it has changed a lot.
The way we are doing things right now with draft in Brazil, and I think we are being a bit successful in our venture right here, is to bet all our chips in content marketing. So this is the way we monetize our audience. We offer value to the brands that support our platform, and I really think this is not by chance. I really think when you put your editorial expertise at the service of brands that need to communicate themselves in a new way to a new audience, I think we really make a difference in the lives of these brands, in the efforts of these corporations.
So Adriano, this is more about the content. You are talking about producing content that is different than just put your brand in different places.
Well,
yes?
yeah, and I think there's a middle ground. So what's happening, and Adriano's lived through this, is there's been this decline and lack or this demise of the traditional journalism model. So nobody wants to pay for advertising anymore. Therefore, you can't keep print journalism alive, even digital advertising. That's people have pulled away from that because nobody wants to be sold to or marketed to anymore. And then you've got the rise of inbound marketing, where you've got all these brands that are craving. I know, I live this. I fulfill this demand every day myself in my world. Is you've got brands that are craving content, good, really good, well-written content that people want to engage with, and they're struggling with that. They're struggling to produce it with the kind of volume that they need. So they really need this journalism skill set. And they also still want their stories told through traditional journalism channels, and then they're frustrated because they can't, because there's no journalists out there anymore, because they've all left and gone into PR. And so there's just this really weird thing that's going on out there right now. And if you even look at what's going on in the US right now, gosh, I don't even know who to believe, even in the traditional journalism world. I don't know whether I'm listening to Republican propaganda or Democratic propaganda anymore, and who's behind it, who's paying for it, and it's just a very weird place. But I think what Draft's doing is really interesting. I mean, at the end of the day, it's always been a brand that has been paying a journalist's salary, right? They just have been doing it through through paid advertising.
What is the value
that was always the economic model. So why is it any different that I go and I actually hire an entity to tell stories, especially if the brand allows you to do this in still a somewhat arm's length subjective way. So if they're brave enough to say, Draft, write about my industry, write about my business, but come at it from a real journalistic point of view. And I think there are brands out there that really truly will be that brave, that will allow for that. So I do think that what you're onto, and I told you this, that I think it's a very interesting model.
So we could think that not only the business model, but the key people that have this talent to write in a good way those stories. I would like to.
You can't hire marketers.
Yeah,
you need to hire journalists.
And
you really
you
do.
also need people to find those stories. I believe today like she said, we are in the middle of a movement from something that was very solid and well established, like the journalism industry, the big companies, and we are in the middle of the patch. Another thing that we have no idea what it is, and everybody's trying to guess. So maybe this is the better path, maybe this is the, and we have no idea. What I see this big picture, is that we have like an avalanche of information today. So it's not about publishing information, because we already have a lot of information. You type entrepreneurship in Google, you have millions of results, millions of pages talking about this. The thing is about curating information. So how do you select the best information that will serve you? Because the information that serves to you is not the same information that serves me. And then that's where the journalist work and the marketing work comes, to curating information, and the marketing comes to deliver the information through the right channels to the right public.
Yeah, and I also think back to storytelling. You know, to me, there's a real absence, because again, journalists are too pressured. They don't have any time. They don't have the backing, the economic backing, to go out and tell really good. I mean, maybe you'll see that in a Vanity Fair or some of these larger publications that are really more consumer driven, but you just don't see those really great long form pieces of editorial content anymore. So you get little chunky stuff, or I call it listicle kind of, you know, the BuzzFeed stuff of the world, you know. And the marketers aren't equipped to really truly do that. I mean, I suppose anybody that's crossed over from the journalism world, but really have that sort of curiosity and that real storytelling capacity. I don't think that's in most marketers' training.
Yeah.
And so I think that there's this really, I do think there's this place for
I would like to
these disenfranchised journalists.
to bring the creativity on this conversation. I would like to listen about your point of view, Tiffany. And we are here in a place that's so creative, this town in Cambridge. So and the value of creativity on this kind of business. When we talk about digital media, you need to be like so creative. And what you could share with us about your company and what you are doing.
For sure. So my name is Tiffany Resende, and I'm from Adams Integrator. So I'm one of the co-founders and the CEO, and I really love the shift in journalism, because what impacts people are the stories. The stories are uplifting, encouraging, supportive. Everyone likes to hear about the underdog that made it up top. And we get to work with international entrepreneurs, and that's even more precious and special, because they're coming from different ecosystems, different countries, different cultures. So you're getting a really big mix of different stories, and really impactful stories that really make a Canadian myself just step back and go, wow, like really blow you out of the water. And I think you're right, we're so bombarded with facts and the 10 steps to this, or the 10 good articles of 2018, and I think we're missing the connection between the person, the story to their business, and why they're doing what they're doing. I don't think we're saying this is like marketing, this is what we do, we're the best in this and this and this. Why are you the best? Why did you start this company? What is your greater vision than just your business?
What are the issues that are wrapping around a business that really, you know, deserve some critical thinking around them? Like, what are the bigger issues at play? So there's the individual stories, there's the company stories, and then there's just a lot of really
absolutely. And then mix that with a great ecosystem like we have in Canada, and a creative town, and the support of locals and other businesses. It's a recipe for success. It's a recipe for explosion. So I think that you can have the best idea in the world, but if you can't sell it and spread that passion to anyone else, it's just an idea. Nothing happens. It never comes to fruition unless there's the backing behind that story that pushes it out to everybody else.
So I think, you know, great engaging content, and then I think there's some where the marketing comes in is some really good. I mean, if you look at a Gizmodo or a Mashable, they're just absolute link magic, right? So they do a lot of really smart things around SEO. So I think if you're able to work with brands tell really great, engaging content, and then work your SEO magic in the background so that the brand gets what they want, which is really, at the end of the day, traffic and curiosity back to their
Rodrigo, tell me about your experience here. After a few years, you as an entrepreneur in Brazil and moved to Canada and started as an entrepreneur here, and now you are working with amazing talents around the world to bring to Canada. What's that?
Yeah, I have been an entrepreneur in Brazil for like all my life since I was after university, and then I wanted to have this international experience, and I have been here like 4 or 5 years before coming in to get to know the place. And then at that time I just said, hey, I think that's the perfect place for me to have this experience. So I came to the Accelerating Center. I had the pleasure to have this wonderful mentor with me for 1 year and a half.
I got the kisses.
And I think that, in the last few years, the Brazilian ecosystems have been developing a lot. Like in my case, in Belo Horizonte, what you call this São Pedro Valley, and many others around Brazil. But here we have a much more advanced and more cases, and an ecosystem that's really open to one company to help the other. So I think it's a great place to live and a great place to be an entrepreneur as well.
If you think about what is key, what's for you? What was maybe the key thing to? Okay, I want to really move to Canada, but I want to live in Waterloo. What is key in this region for you?
Why Waterloo?
I think it was a match of things, like having a great university, a great standard of living, being a kind of small city. So I think I was raised in a small town in Brazil, and then I moved to Belo Horizonte for many years. I was kind of tired of staying for 1 hour in traffic. So, I have 2 kids, and I thought it was like a perfect combination of factors to have a good career and a good life to raise kids and things like that.
Adriano, just would like to make another question that is in terms of when you have for almost 5 years running Draft in Brazil, for sure, and you publish a lot of stories, different kinds of stories, different kinds of business, and what's in terms of if you can share with us 3 things that you see in those in these new generations or the new economy. What is the kind of business or the kind of skills, or I don't know if qualities that you identify in those new generations that is more, they are not looking more for like huge companies or pyramidal structures, and looking more for, okay, I want to develop my business and grow by myself and try different things, be more free. What do you see on those guys when you and you are sharing those stories in Brazil?
Yes, I think the first thing I would like to say is that more and more I think this cut is not is not about age anymore. It's about an attitude. It's not about. It's not only. We do not deal only with young people. I think in the new economy, it's much more of an energy of not being satisfied with doing things as things have been done forever. And I see people here in our ecosystem. I see people that who are very young, and they may be very conservative in their way of thinking, and they are trying to live again a reality that is not sustainable anymore. I mean, the corporate life, the way it was like 10 or 20 years ago. As much as I see some senior people around 60 or 70 years old who are in the co-working spaces trying to innovate and trying to reinvent themselves. So this is one thing I would like to say is it's not about age, it's about attitude, it's about what do you expect from yourself and from life and from business itself. As the main characteristics of the people that we deal with on draft, I think one thing is the need to understand the business as part of your life, a business as a lifestyle. You don't separate anymore. You try not to separate anymore. Like I work from Monday to Friday in a place that I hate, in order to get some money to live the life I want from in weekends. This is a model. This is an industrial model that doesn't work anymore for these people, and it generates a huge gap from what big companies offer to those talents and what those talents want or expect from the companies. And some companies come to us for us to try to bridge that gap. How do I communicate? It's not only about telling to my consumers, but is also about telling to those. It's about talking to those talents. How do I attract? How do I converse? How do I make myself understood with those talents that I cannot reach anymore? This is companies are very desperate in Brazil on that point.
Not just in
big
Brazil.
Companies like Banco Itaú or Unilever or P&G, all those big companies, they are not attractive anymore. All of a sudden,
you're thinking that's
oh no, this is not a Brazilian thing.
Hmm.
I mean, it's just it's funny because I can relate to everything you're saying, and I think of myself and sort of how I've built my life, and it's really interesting that sort of all those things are the things that attract me to entrepreneurship, the tech community, but no, the changing, sort of mindset, attraction of talent into big companies. Nobody wants to be the corporate drone anymore. Mm-hmm. And then, Rodrigo talks about, Toronto traffic is not anything to be, cracked up. And so why would I live in Toronto if I'm a young millennial or at any age? Why would I live in Toronto or spend 2 hours a day or 4 hours a day commuting into a job that, to basically, so and these corporations, what they're trying to do is they're trying to say, okay, I'll give you everything you want. I'll give you lunch, I'll give you exactly. It's like exactly. Or here's unlimited vacations, and they're throwing all these things, but we still want you all in the office, and it's just, and it's like, most people, I don't care, myself included, I'm like, no, I want to go to work in my flip-flops, and I don't want to have to drive 2 hours a day.
And why are they throwing those perks at you?
Yeah.
Because they know, it sucks. Let's vamp it up. Let's give you every Friday. Let's have lunch, or let's do a.
And then they struggle with if you and what's it's funny because when I first started my business, I remember after 2008, it's really interesting. Whenever you see this really huge economic downturn, there's this big shift happens. Mm-hmm. Like after the downturn in, and before that it was like the explosion of the internet. The internet didn't exist before, the 1990s, and it's just there's these like really big shifts, and I'm like, what's that big shift going to be after 2008? right? And one of them I predicted would be the virtualization of the workforce. You know, these big office towers in these great big cities are going to be empty because people are going to go, you know.
And that's why Canada is a good option, because I'm not here for a long time, but I never seen a place where you can find people from all over the world.
Right.
And I believe that working today is not about selling to Canada, selling to Toronto area. When you have selling services, when you're selling softwares, you're selling to all over.
Ago in 2008, there were these huge layoffs, and now they've all gone out and embraced entrepreneurship, and they're like, screw that. And I remember saying to Stephen Fike, actually was one of our fellow mentors when he left BlackBerry and decided to go to his own, and I remember saying to him, he said, do you think I should do this? And I said, I've got kids at home. And I said, well, if you do it, you're rude.
The creative businesses, the social businesses, the scale businesses, the valley model. Okay, I have to grow, I have to accelerate, I have to increase my equity, and then I sell the company, and then I come back and I create a new startup. You know that specific type of innovator, of entrepreneur. And the fourth territory was and is the corporate innovator, the guy who hacks the system from inside. And then we started to receive and to understand that some people are not just hacking a business model or a process or a company or even an industry. Some people right now, they are dealing with the hacking of their very lives. And those are the most inspiring stories. Those are the stories that hit like 600,000 views in draft. We usually publish those stories on Fridays, like something that you gotta read in your weekend, and then to understand that you are not alone when you are in your insomnia nights, trying to understand what the fuck are you doing with your life right now.
Yeah, we all ask that. Yeah,
exactly.
I think that's fantastic.
Many people are having the same good time or bad time, depending on how you look at it. And this is great because this very time that we live now, they are very empowering. I think people are really thinking that they can do things about their existence that maybe 10 or 20 years ago they would think that was not possible.
Right.
And now they think it's all up to them, and we try to give voice to those experiences, to those testimonies, and then we had to create this fifth territory, which is the life hackers.
Funny, because I think people the life hacker, I mean, it's not exclusively, as you say, it's not necessarily age determined, but I mean, we see a lot at the Accelerator Center of people who have just, you know, they've thrown out their suit, they've, you know, either the company's left them or they left the company, one or the other, but, you know, and they've used that opportunity where they've been downsized or taken a package or whatever, and they purposely chucked their suit, cut off their tie, and you know, chopped up their briefcase or whatever, and they just said to heck with this. And for some reason, the AC seems to attract a lot of those more mature entrepreneurs. So people tend to think of the startups. They tend to think of, you know, the Mark Zuckerberg right out of Harvard in his hoodie. But there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there who, and they're actually some of our most successful ones because they actually have some life experience.
Exactly.
And they've seen the problems that exist, and they can't fix them inside the organization. And so they say, fine, I'm out, and I'm going to fix it now. And then they'll, you know, probably end up getting back in there at some point because they'll be acquired. But we see a lot of that at the AC in particular, and I don't know whether they're just more attracted to our programming or it's all us old fart ventures that make them feel, you know, welcome. I'm not sure what it is, but we do see, you know, a lot of folks that are sort of 30, 40, 50 plus or more.
I think that one thing that's making this whole entrepreneurship or life hacking grow in all aspects are that we can all connect now. So
Right.
I don't know, 40 years ago, if I had an idea and I want to hack, I find out how to hack, I don't know, health treatment, I would be alone. How could I find someone that would have the same idea as me, that would have the same problem as me?
Right.
And today we can instant connect like hundreds of people with the same problem, like in a second. And this is
You can engage with that tribe.
and this is the magic.
But you can
that
also
is-
assemble a virtual team to solve the problem, right?
Exactly.
So,
And the problem could be not just locally. Problem is global, and you can solve the same problem in different places.
right,
So more
you know.
social business.
So,
that
you
we are
know, if
talking
you're trying to
about.
get a startup off the ground, you don't have a CTO, you don't have to hire one locally necessarily. You can hire one from Brazil, or you can hire one from Nova Scotia, or wherever it is, right?
Great.
So,
Great. We have a few minutes yet. The idea here is just a last round. I would like to Rodrigo to start. Tell us what, and everyone can complete the same question. Is 2 or 3 things that this conversation is good for you?
Okay. Well, I think that once not the internet came to us, but once the internet became so big, there are 2 things that happened. They can look like a little bit technical or finance oriented, but they are not. Is that the distribution costs, the marginal cost for media became 0. So, for example, when I lived in that place in Brazil, we had like 3 newspapers, you can rent a DVD, and so you're going to read that shit.
That's
Yeah.
what you have.
And now, you don't have a reason not to read the best in the world. It's out there. So I think that this kind of even obvious characteristic of the internet has this huge implication that for some niches, there's no space for a second one, because you can access them now. You're going to see which one is the best. Of course, for your profile, your circumstance, your taste, whatever. But so I think this kind of changes everything. Like you're not going to have like that local one because that's the one that you can get. No, like you need to be the best one or forget it.
You can start thinking that you are a global company. It doesn't matter if you will solve a global problem, but you start from the first step as a global. And because you are consuming content or consuming media not locally, you are consuming this tool.
Yeah, you're going to compete like with the best writers of the world in your niche, so you'd better be really good.
I think it's true of any profession though, really.
Yeah.
I mean, I always say that to my kids, like whatever you do, you gotta be like on your A game, because those are the ones who always succeed, right? So,
Larissa, do you have 2 or 3 things that you would like
It's
to
interesting what Rodrigo said, because when I left Brazil, I was working in one of those newspapers. I was working in a newspaper, really made a paper that was published every day.
That's weird.
And we are all, and it was not just me, we are all asking ourselves, all people of my age, in the 30s, asking, what are we doing? What are we doing? We're in the digital era and we are writing for a paper that gets
Printed.
printed in a graph.
and you're held to like
And you have to
space.
and you have to buy it, and you can't
editor
write
cuts your
more
page.
than the page. And they, of course, all the newspapers today are trying to merge with the digital, but it's hard because it's a century-old industry. There's a century-old culture inside the newsrooms, and Adriano knows how it is. You have like heavyweight journalists that came doing the same thing for decades, and they were really successful. So this, it's the same like unhappiness that being on a company that it takes a long time to shift because it's a big company. While you were like just one person, you can shift easily. So if the company doesn't shift, I'm sorry, I will shift maybe to another country, but I think that's what's happening now. So the companies are like these big elephants, and they have to shift, and they know they have to shift in another direction, but they are like.
Very, very.
And so people are jumping out and
Yeah.
like, I'm sorry, I will go walking ahead, and you can come after.
It's a natural downsizing.
Yes, it's my feeling of what is happening now.
Yeah, nice. Ellyn, what do you like?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I think this is really, I feel like there's this, everybody is crying out for something different. Brands are crying out for something different, readers are crying out for something different, journalists are crying out for something different, and everybody's sort of right now in this flux state. We're all searching for that next new thing. And I feel it is out there. You know, does Draft have the model? I don't know. I guess it'll be time to prove it out.
Yeah.
But it feels to me like you're onto something. And it's, you know, and I as a traditional PR person, that's my training. You know, I was used to selling the story to the journalist and convincing the journalist to tell the story. And I feel very sad that there's no journalists anymore to approach and to tell stories. It's you know, it's such an amazing industry, and it plays such an important role. And so if we can figure out what that model looks like in this new world, you know, I think once again it will allow journalists to tell those powerful, critically thought out, scary stories at times.
Yeah, it's like they say the newspapers are dying, but the journalism will go on. The journalism will like find a place.
Right. We just need to figure out how these people can be funded.
Yeah.
You know, so that they're not having to go out and self-fund. That's what we've got to figure out.
Exactly. No, I think today was awesome. Thank you guys for being part of this. But I think now is the time. This transition is so needed, and this is the best part: is exploring what works, what doesn't work. The stories, I think, is such a special, unique way of sharing who you are, your vision, your passion. And I think now with social media and cell phones and everything, it's just making it, we still need journalists and branding, but it's so much easier to get the truth and your passion out if it's through social media, if it's through an article. And I think people now are very open-minded to different inputs from different sources. So I think now is the time where the movement is really going to explode, because we're kind of seeing that we've been fed only one way and not the whole story. And now when we have everyone together with this globalization and the internet, to be honest, quite frankly, your story now can go all over, the truth can go all over the world without limits.
I think that's actually really an important thing. I think not only are we more open, I think people are craving true independent journalism. Like I really am I'm not at all afraid to say that in the US right now I feel like all I'm getting is propaganda on both sides. And so I'm starting to go to other countries for sources of information because I'm hoping that they have more perspective.
It's almost become the spam
It's
today.
it's
Like we're getting
terrible.
spammed with.
It's terrible, and I don't know who to trust it. And so I think, you know, sheerly not a marketer, just as a human being, trying to understand what the issues are that are going on in the world today, I think we really need journalist perspective. And if brands are willing to fund that and get behind it, that's the question.
Perfect. Adriano, you have a few minutes to give us your final thinking.
All right. Well, thank you very much for inviting me. It's been lovely to meet you all. I only hope that we can have this coffee in person sometime soon. I would like to say one thing. I think, as much as I understood, everyone on the table has some kind of work in media or content or journalism, right? So my belief is that we have a very good value proposition to guarantee our careers and our relevance in the market. I disagree very much of this pessimism on journalism and on content business. We live a crisis of a business model. We don't live a crisis of relevance. We just need to transform our relevance and to offer our relevance in new ways. The designers were much smarter than us because they transformed the way they think in a tool that everybody bought for the name of design thinking. But there is one thing, and this thing is the writer thinking. We did not productify our expertise, but there is one thing that we do that nobody else does. The way we research, the way we organize information, the way we deal with ignorance, our own ignorance, the way we solve problems, the way we organize information. This is the writer's thinking, and I firmly believe, and I am experiencing that in draft, that we can turn those expertises in products that we can, or services that we can sell to brands. Brands want to become publishers, and we are the ones who to help the brands to produce their editorial strategies. PR agencies doesn't know how to do that.
No.
Ad agencies don't know how to do that. We know how to do that. So I am very confident about the future for our industry and for us. And I would like to end saying thank you to Ellyn, because I think Ellyn just said one phrase that entered my mind, and I would. Yes. Draft is not about startups, but it's much more about the cultural revolution based on entrepreneurship. This is the stories that we tell, and this is what makes us different enough to dream of being a player in Canada, telling those stories, not about companies, not about ventures, but about those people who are behind the companies and behind the ventures, and to tell the story of the cultural revolution based on entrepreneurship, as it goes in Canada as much as it goes in Brazil right now.
Very good, very good. Thank you very much, Adriano. Thank you very much for everybody here. This is the 11th Cafepreneur.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome. And we start just as 3 guys in coffee. And this guy wasn't here a couple of months ago. And we are growing. Now we discussing different topics in each one. So thank you very much for your presence here, contributions in this discussion. I believe I hope that it enrich a little bit, and the people here come back home to think in the weekend, next weekend, in good things. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Adriano, I guess you're coming to Canada soon, I guess?
Hey, Adriano.
Yes.
You're coming to